Let's talk a bit about manipulating variables. So we've seen now how to create and work with variables. We have to declare the data type, the name of the variable, and then we give it some value. We ended then with a semicolon. Now, if we have a look at this exercise, we have the guessinggame.java, which is this one, and we have defined two integers, mystery1 and mystery2. And for example, this one, if we have a look at line 3, is going to evaluate to whatever, no, it's going to take the value of whatever this expression evaluates to. So an expression evaluates to something else. In this case, it's going to evaluate to an integer, and the value is going to be 14. 8 plus 16 plus 6, 14. So mystery1 is going to have the value of 14. Now, if we have a look at line 4, we have a variable called mystery2 of type integer, and the value of this variable is going to be whatever this expression evaluates to. So 8 minus 6 is going to be 2. Okay. Let's have a look at the further instructions. We will talk about these operators in the rest of the lesson, so it's going to be a series of them. We have to now use the system.out.print statement to print the variable that holds 2. We already established that the variable called mystery2 is going to hold the value 2. Because if we evaluate this expression, 8 minus 6, this is going to be 2, okay? We run it and we get 2. Okay, let's go to the next one. Now we're going to have a look at addition and subtraction. So if we think about a bank account, we would have to have a balance. What else can we do with a bank account? We can deposit an amount. We want that amount that we deposit to be updated, so to be reflected in our new balance. Now, we can use, on integers, we can use this plus sign, and this means the regular addition that we know in simple math, yeah? Same with the subtraction, so with a minus sign. Now, if we have a look at the instructions, it tells us to create an integer called animals in zoo that holds the amount of zebras plus the amount of giraffes at the zoo. Then we need to print our variable on the screen. Okay, so we need to create another integer called animals in zoo, and this is going to hold the sum of our animals. So we have zebras and giraffes. So we're going to copy this variable and we're going to add the plus sign. We're going to copy this other variable. We're going to end it with a semicolon. So now our variable of type integer called animals in zoo is going to hold the value of this expression evaluated. So first we evaluate this. Zebras are 8, giraffes are 4, so 12. Now we know that the value of our animals in zoo variable is going to be 12. So we also need to print. So we're going to use the system.out.println. We're going to end it with a semicolon, and I'm going to copy that name of the variable and I'm going to run it. Okay, now the 2 zebras have been traded to a neighboring rival zoo. Subtract 2 from the number of zebras and store the result in a variable called num zebras after trade. So I'm gonna do this integer, yeah. So an integer which is equal to our initial number of zebras minus 2. Okay. Then we need to print the new number of zebras. So we're going to use again the system.out.println end it with a semicolon, and then here we're gonna print the number of zebras after trade. We're gonna run this. We have an error somewhere. On line 10. Let's have a look on line 10. Why do we have a system.out.print? I'm missing a T here. Print. Okay. And now we have 6. Okay. This is good. I'm not gonna cut out any errors that I make during these recording sessions, simply because it's good to see, and it's good to get used to seeing errors on the screen. So you might be seeing some other videos where somebody's typing code into they're typing code like they're a whiz programmer. We are not. We're learning, and errors are a typical occurring thing in programming. So don't be scared of errors. They simply tell you that they are your helpers. The errors that you make in your program. Let's go now to the next exercise. We're gonna have a look at the multiplication and division. So let's say our employer is calculating our paycheck and depositing it into our bank account. We worked 40 hours last week at a rate of 15.50 an hour. Java can calculate this using the multiplication operator, which is the star. Okay. So we have however much we need to be paid. So the paycheck amount is going to be the number of hours plus our hourly rate, and it's going to give us the salary. Okay. If we want to make a division, we have to use this /. Okay. So this is the star, the asterisk is multiplication, and this, the /, is division. Okay. Now, division has different results with integers. The /, so the division operator, does integer division, which means that any remainder is lost. So say you would, in a normal regular math expression, you would have some sort of exercise that will give you the result of 5.5. Well, in Java, if we're going to calculate using the same numbers with this operator, with the /, with the division operator, it's going to do integer division. Okay, so it means that the decimal part is lost. Now, let's have a look at the instructions here. If we have a look in main is the starting point of our program. There is a variable called subtotal, so this one, which represents the subtotal of an amount to pay on a bill, and a variable called tax, which represents the amount of tax added to the subtotal. Create a double. Create a double variable, total, that holds subtotal plus subtotal times tax. Okay, so this is a very simple math exercise. If you're adding something to something else where it has multiplication, we first do the multiplication and then we do the addition. Okay, and then we have to use system.out.println to print the total variable. So let's see. We get 32.625. There were 4 people who bought this meal together and want to split the cost. We create a double called per person. Okay, so we have a double per person, and this variable holds the total divided by 4. Print the per person variable. So system.out.println per person 8.15625 per person. Okay, let's go to the next one. Modulo. Okay, modulo essentially represents the remainder left after a division. So say you have 3 divided by 2, that modulo is going to be 1, simply because 1 is the remainder of that operation, of that exercise. So say if we baked 10 cookies and gave them out in 3 batches, how many would we have left over after giving out all of the full batches we could? So say we have 10 in total. If we give 3 and then 3 and then 3, we're going to be left with 1. 1 is our modulo, okay? So that is what modulo means, the remainder after a division, okay? To represent modulo, to calculate modulo, we use this percentage sign. So if we have a look at this example, we have an integer called cookies baked. So this is a variable and it holds number 10. Then we have cookies left over, and to calculate this, we have 10 modulo 3. This is going to give us 1, okay? You have 1 cookie left after giving out all the batches of 3 that you can give. Sometimes modulo can be a tricky concept, but is not. Actually, if you do a few examples, you're going to get used to it, and with this, you're going to get used to the concept of remainder after a division. Okay, so let's have a look at the instructions. If you're trying to split up students into groups of 3, how many students will be left out once the groups are made? Let's create a variable called left out. So we have the number of students here is 26. We have int left out, and we have to print 26, so students modulo 3, okay? Print then the variable system.out.println left out. We have 2 left out, okay? Let's go to the next example, the next exercise, greater than and less than. So now we're gonna think back to our bank account program, and we want to see if we're withdrawing less money than what we have available. So in Java has a relational operators for numeric data types. So for numbers, you can use something like 7 is greater than 2. This is going to evaluate, this is an expression, and it's going to evaluate to something else. In our case, what do you think is going to be? It's going to be false. Well, false. It's going to be true. 7 is greater than 2. So this is going to evaluate to true. Okay. If we're going to put 7 is smaller or less than 2, this is going to evaluate to false. Okay. Now, if we have a look at the instructions, it tells us to print the expression that checks if the amount of credits you have earned, so credits earned, is greater than the number of credits you need to graduate. So print the expression that checks system.out.println. So we have to print this expression that checks. So inside here we're gonna put this expression that checks if our credits earned is greater than the number of credits that we need to graduate. Okay, so we're gonna print out what this expression evaluates to, and this is gonna evaluate to either true or false. So we have credits earned, we have 176.5. We're gonna check if 176.5 is greater than whatever credits we need to graduate. This is gonna evaluate to false. Indeed, because this number is smaller than this number, okay? Now we need to create a variable called credits after seminar. So I'm gonna create another variable called double credits after seminar that holds the amount of credits earned after taking a seminar, which is worth credits of seminar credits. Credits after seminar should be the sum of credits earned and credits of seminar, okay? Now we need to print, so we're gonna use the same system.out.println. We're gonna print something, print out whether credits to graduate is less than credits after seminar. So if credits to graduate is less than credits after seminar, it means that we have enough grades, and this should print, I believe, true, because 176.5 plus 8 is going to be 184.5, and we only need 180, and now we have 184, yeah? So definitely we have enough credits, so it's going to print true. So initially we had false, which came from here, and then we took a seminar, which was worth 8 credits. These 8 credits were added to our credits earned, and now we checked again whether credits to graduate, whether what we need in order to graduate is smaller than what we currently have. And that is true, because 180 is less than 184.5. And therefore we got true. We evaluated this expression and we got true. All right, now we're gonna have a look at equals and not equals. Okay, so how would we validate our paycheck to see if we got paid the right amount? We can use another relational operator, and in this case, this is represented by the double equal sign. This tells us if two variables are equal. So essentially, for example, if we have 54, this expression will evaluate to true, because 54 is indeed equal to 54. We cannot use, and it would be incorrect to use just one equal sign, because these in this context means assignment. So you would assign to 52 a value of 54, you would assign it a value of 54. It's not legal anyways, but it's just for example purposes. Okay, so if we want to compare these two values, we'll have to use the double equal sign. Okay. Now, we have to, this tells exactly what I said before. One equal sign is how we assign values to variables, so it shouldn't be mixed with one with another. Okay. If we want to check if they're not equal, so say 54 does not equal to 54, this would evaluate to false, because this expression is not true. What is not true automatically is false. And this is the syntax, the way we write the not. Yeah. So does not. 54 does not equal to 54, which this one evaluates to false. Okay. All right. So let's move to the instructions. If you have unhurted two unlabeled albums, record A and record B, to see if these are the same album, you're going to compare the number of songs on each one and the total length of the albums. Okay, first create a variable called same number of songs. So we're gonna create a variable called same number of songs that stores whether the two albums have the same number of songs. So in this case, what do you think should be the type of the variable that holds this, whatever this expression is going to evaluate to? So we have to create a variable called same number of songs that stores whether the two albums have the same number of songs. So this is going to be a Boolean, because we have to evaluate whether songs in A equals, or no, we have to use the album length here. Equals album length B. And because this is an expression, we're gonna put it in brackets like that. Okay, so it tells us that we need to use songs A and songs B. Okay, so we did this one. Essentially, this variable, same number of songs, is gonna take the result of this expression. So whatever this expression evaluates to is gonna be stored in the same number of songs, which is a variable of type Boolean. Okay. Now on instruction number 2, we have to create a variable called different length. And different length stores the result of checking whether the two album lengths are not the same. So this is going to be a Boolean again. It's going to be called different length. And we're going to check whether the two album lengths are not the same. So we're going to check whether album length A is different than album length B. This is going to evaluate to true, because album length A does not equal to album length B. So this whole expression evaluates to true, because this one is not this one. Okay, it does not equal to this one. If I'm going to run it. All right, this was the example about equals and not equals. Now we're going to have a look at the less than or equal to. So we have to have a look at the notation. The notation is like this: less than or equal to, less than or equal to. So we could use, well, this is greater than or equal to, and this is less than or equal to, okay? So you can say if you have 15 is greater than or equal to 16. 15 is greater than or equal to? No, it's not. So this expression is going to evaluate to false. Say 15 is smaller than or equal to 16. Is 15 smaller than or equal to? Yes, it is. So this expression is going to evaluate to true. Now, if we have here 15, what do you think the result is going to be? What do you think this expression is going to evaluate to? Well, this expression is going to evaluate to true because 15, we're checking if 15 is smaller than or equal to 15. Yes, it is. It's smaller than or equal to. So this equal to makes it true. Okay, let's have a look at an example. If we have, you have been trying to complete a 30-day challenge to drink enough water per day, which reminds me I should drink more water per day as well. Create a double, so a variable of type double called total recommended amount, and set it to the product, so that means multiplication, of the recommended water intake, okay, and the amount of days in the challenge. This is days in challenge, okay, times, we're gonna end it with a semicolon. We're gonna run this. Now, if we have a look at the instruction number 2, we have to create a Boolean variable called is challenge complete, and we're gonna set this to the result of checking if your intake, your water intake, is at least as much as the total recommended, is at least smaller than or equal to your total recommended amount. So we have to check whether whatever we drank is, well, we should put is greater than or equal to the total recommended amount. Then we have to print the results of this. So system is challenge complete. Okay, so let's have a look. Before we run this, let's have a look at the code. So we have this variable of type Boolean, so it's going to contain either true or false, and this is going to take the value of this expression, so your water intake, at least, if this is at least as much as the total recommended. So is my water intake at least, so is greater than or equal to my total recommended amount, okay? So our water intake is 8. How is it? Total recommended amount is gonna be, let's see, so 2,4, okay, this is gonna be 240, yeah, so here we get to use the comments, so this is gonna evaluate to 240 total recommended amount, yeah, because we have to drink 8 liters, say, or whatever it might be, for 30 days. If we do this, the total recommended amount should be 240, okay? And now, our water intake, which is 235.5, is going to be checked against 240. So is this greater than or equal to? So whatever I had, is it greater than or equal to the total recommended, which is 240? Is not. So it's not greater than, and this is going to evaluate to false. So here on the screen we should see false. And indeed we have on the screen false. Okay, we're going to now move on to the next lecture. The next exercise. All right, so now we came to talk about strings. We're going to talk about strings a bit more in detail. If you remember in the previous lection where we talked about strings, I mentioned that these are objects and these are a reference type. And I also mentioned that the strings have built-in methods or functions that can operate on any variable of type string. Well, in this video now we're going to see, in this exercise, we're going to see one of those methods or one of those functions, yeah, that can operate on any variable of type string. So if before we could use the equal sign to check between two primitive types, so if we had 5 and 7, these are of type integer, so type integer is a primitive type. To check, to compare essentially these two values, we could use this notation, the equal sign, because they are of type primitive type, okay? So the data type is integer in our case here in this example. So therefore we can use the equal notation. Now when we talk about strings, in order to compare two strings, so say we have Alex and another one would be Dan, we cannot use the equal sign, or if we can use it, it's not going to give us the correct result. Okay, so for strings, because this is type string, we have to use their built-in methods or their built-in functions that came with the Java programming language in order to compare the two values. Okay. So in this case, if we have a look at the example that is given to us here, let's say we have a string. So we have a variable person 1, another variable called person 2. These variables are of type string, and one has the value of Paul, the other one has the value of John. Now, if we want to compare these two, we will have to use the name of the first variable, okay? And because it's a string, it's gonna have access to the built-in methods that come with Java, and that method is the dot equals. So the way we access the available methods when it comes to strings, and later on of other objects you will see in the future videos, is by using the dot notation. So you have whatever variable or whatever value, and to access the methods that are available to this data type, you will have to use the dot notation. Once you will press the dot once you type in the dot, you can access the method. So in our case, equals. And here in these brackets, in this parentheses, you will have to add the value or the variable that you want to compare this first one with, okay? So in this case, if we were to do this, this is perfectly okay. And we will compare this value with this value, okay? And this is the way we do it when it comes to strings. We use the built-in methods available to that data type, the reference data type, okay? All right, so going back to our example here, if we try and compare person 1, whose value is Paul, and we use the dot equals notation to access the dot equal method, yeah, and we give it person 2, so we compare Paul with John, this is gonna print false, of course, so this is gonna evaluate to false because Paul is not John, so this value is not this other one, is not identical to this value, this other one. And it's gonna print false simply because we are using the system.out.println. If we have a look at this example, so we are comparing person 1, whose value is Paul, with person 3, whose value is again Paul. This is gonna print true since this value is identical to this value. This does not mean that they are exactly the same objects. It only means that their values are equal. So say you and a friend, you go out to have an ice cream, and if you're having an ice cream and your friend has the same type of ice cream, that doesn't mean that their ice cream is yours. It means that you simply have the same type of ice cream, but that does not mean that the existing ice cream is the same one, like it's one object. These are two objects, two distinct objects, two different objects, which happens to have the same value. So two objects with the same value. Okay. Now, if we have a look at the instructions, we have 3 lines from a song in this file called song.java. First, we print out whether line 1 and line 2 are the same. So we have a look at line 1 and we have a look at line 2, and clearly we can see, nope, they're not the same. But let's actually test it and follow the instructions. So we have to print system.out.print. And what do we have to print? So we have to print if line 1, which is this one, so that is the variable, we access the dot equal method with this dot equals. And what are we gonna compare it against? We're gonna compare it against the variable called line 2. What do you think is going to be printed on the screen? So on the screen, line 2 equals line 1 equals line 2? No. So it means that this statement on line 7 is going to print false because these two variables do not contain the same, do not have the same value, do not have the same contents. Okay, so if we're gonna run this, it did print indeed false, okay, because these are different. Now let's have a look at the second instruction, which tells us whether to print whether line 2 and line 3 are equal. All right, so we're gonna do the same thing, but this time with different values. So now we're checking line 2 against line 3. Okay, so if we have a look at line 2 and line 3, they seem pretty identical to me. Okay, they seem like they have the same exact value, and it means they should print true. Okay, so this is gonna print false like we saw here already, and this is gonna print true, as we're gonna see now in a second. So false and true. Okay, Let's move now on to the next exercise. String concatenation. So if you remember in one of the previous exercises, I already mentioned about string concatenation, which means simply putting two strings together. So if we have, for example, this expression would evaluate to zebra. So this would evaluate to zebra, okay? Because you put this string with this string, you put them together, you squish them together, and you're gonna get this result, okay? So this is what concatenation means. Similarly, say you have this example. You're gonna get this result. So you put together ZE and a 1. ZE1. Okay? So concatenation means putting together. All right, now let's have a look at the instructions. Okay, in our zoo, so we have a variable called animals of type integer, and this variable holds the value 12. And then we have a variable called species and is of type string, and it holds the value zebra, okay? A sequence of characters. Now, our instructions tell us in our zoo we have a certain number of animals stored in animals, of a certain species stored in species, okay? Use the plus, okay, to make a new string variable. So already we know we need a string type. The variable name is going to be zoo description, and this is going to equal to, so it tells us to use the it should hold a string that looks like this. Our zoo has animals and species, okay? All right, so what we need to do here is to use exactly this. And we're gonna enclose this in double quotes, of course. And here we know that this is supposed to hold our variable, okay? And we're gonna break it off here. We're gonna add the plus. So we are concatenating this, yeah, plus this, okay, plus, essentially let's copy this, it's gonna be a bit easier. So our zoo has animals plus, we're gonna have to enclose this like so, this like so, okay. Okay, and we're gonna concatenate this. So our zoo has animals, so it's gonna display this text concatenated with, well, we can actually do this in one, like so, okay. Animals plus species. Okay, let's run this and see whether this works. Okay, did you create a string variable zoo description and set it to animals? Oh well, does it want us to remove these then? Like so. So we still have our zoo has animals. Plus species. Okay, so for example, zoo description should hold a string that looks like our zoo has animals. Run again. So we have some sort of an error. Our zoo has plus. Oh well, we have two plus signs here. Probably that was the issue. Okay, so we did step 1. I'm sorry if it was a bit of a hassle. I wish I would know how to just make this slightly bigger. Or is it like that? No, it's fine. Anyway, so we have some text. If we want to have this displayed, yeah, obviously without the asking of the example is not quite clear, like 100%, because initially I thought that we need to include these angle brackets here, but actually it looks like we don't need to include them. So for example, okay, let's print out variable should show, for example, animals should be use the plus to make a new string variable called. It should hold a string that looks like this. So print out, well, of course, print out. I'm sorry, I did not see this. I think this video has run for quite a long time now and I'm getting a bit tired. System.out.println, and we're gonna print zoo description. We're gonna end it with a semicolon. If we run it now, we should see our zoo has 12 zebras. 12 comes from here, animals, our zoo has. And then species, it comes from here. So zebras comes from here, from zebra. Okay. And now we're going to move on to the last part. So the very last exercise in manipulating variables. So we have a big one now. This is the review example, the review exercise. We covered addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, modulo, greater than, equal to, greater than or equal to. Then we saw the equal method that applies to objects, to string objects. And then we also learned that we can concatenate or put together strings by using the plus sign. So now we're going to do a little bit of practice to review. Let's try building some of the bank account functionality we talked about throughout the lesson. First, we have create a new double. So we have to create a variable of type double, and this variable is going to be called updated balance. And this updated balance is going to store balance with the amount to withdraw subtracted. So that means we have to do the minus sign. Okay, we've done this step so far. We're gonna run. Now in step 2, now you've decided to split your balance evenly 3 ways and give it to your 3 best friends. Ha, if only. Create a double variable called amount for each friend. and holds your updated balance, so my updated balance, divided by 3. Okay, that should be the code for step 2. I'm gonna run this. Okay, now we go to step 3. Your friends each want to buy a concert ticket with the money you've given them. The tickets cost 250. Create a boolean. We're gonna create a boolean called can purchase ticket, and set it, we're gonna set this equal to whether or not the amount of each friend is at least enough, so it's greater than or equal to the amount required to purchase a ticket, so that would be 250. Okay, then use the system.out.println to print if can purchase ticket. Okay, since they are all getting an equal amount, it's enough to just check it once and then we will know. And it is true, then they can purchase the ticket. Now, if we have a look at step 4, how much money did you give your friends anyway? Use the plus and the system.out.print. Okay, so we're gonna use this to print out I gave each friend, and I'm gonna make this in the big screen so then I see a bit better. So I gave each friend, so this is gonna be text, this is gonna be text. We're gonna add a little bit of one space here, so then the words are not gonna be like squished in together like that. We're gonna add the plus symbol here to concatenate, so to add whatever this variable stores to this text, so to add them together to form a new text. Okay, so I gave each friend with the value of amount each for each friend. Amount for each friend. So we're gonna also add a space in here, so then the amount for each friend. So I gave, oh no, probably that is enough. Okay, so I gave each friend and whatever that might be. Okay, I gave each friend with the value, so use the to print with the value of amount each friend. We're okay, let's run this. Well, we have to add this as well, then 1 2 3. Okay, because it's expecting to see those 3 dots as well. There you go, and now we don't have any errors. Okay, so finally, this is the end of our chapter where we learned about variables, different types. We learned about integer, double, char, boolean. We had a look at strings as well. Then we learned about naming conventions, how we should name them, that the name should be meaningful. We then learned how to compare values of primitive types, also of reference types like the string. Then we learned how to make the very basic mathematical operations: addition, subtraction, division, multiplication. We also learned about the modulo. And then we learned about the comparing variable values. We learned to use the greater than, less than. We learned to use the equal to. So this is to compare primitive data types, and then we used the equals method to compare reference data types or objects. We also learned how to concatenate strings, putting them together, and pretty much this is it. This is the end of the chapter about variables. So thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful, and let's go to the next chapter. Probably now we're going to start diving a bit more deep into Java and learn how to use if and else statements and some more logic, how to use logic in our programming. So stay tuned for future videos.